My name is Ryan, and if you had asked me a month ago what the strangest thing in my life was, I probably would have said my empty bank account or the long nights I spent grinding through spreadsheets at the library. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the way my best friend's mother looked at me that afternoon. Picture this: a cavernous warehouse, the kind of space that still smells of dust and metal, with echoes bouncing off walls that have seen more silence than people. I stepped inside expecting a conversation about logistics, maybe paperwork, maybe the kind of monotonous tasks that could chip away at my student debt. Instead, she was there, Victoria. She wasn't simply standing, she was framed by light cutting through high windows, her red blouse catching and shifting with every step as though the fabric itself was alive. And then she did something so small, yet it ripped the air out of my lungs. Her hand traced the neckline of her shirt, tugging at it in a way that felt deliberate. Not careless. Intentional. Like she wanted me to see. My pulse thundered so loudly, I thought the warehouse itself could hear it. "Ryan, sweetheart?" she said when our eyes met, her voice carrying a warmth that curled along my skin. She pulled me into an embrace, longer than what was appropriate, closer than it should have been. Her nails brushed my back lightly, just enough to spark questions I wasn't ready to answer. That hug didn't belong to the category of maternal kindness. It lived somewhere far riskier. 3 hours before that moment, I had been behind the wheel of my car, cruising through city streets, completely blind to what was waiting for me. I thought I was headed toward a job interview, a chance to wipe away years of suffocating debt. She had called the night before with an offer that sounded too good to be real. A role at the family import company, paid generous enough to crush the weight of my loans in months, not years. I hadn't thought much about it then, other than gratitude and surprise. Derek, my best friend, had mentioned she was lonely after the divorce, that she needed dependable help. I assumed she wanted someone she could trust with paperwork or shipping details. Nothing about that conversation hinted at what would unfold. Yet there I was, inside a warehouse that suddenly felt like a sai, the air thick with unspoken possibilities. "Before we get into contracts," she said, the echo of her heels tapping against concrete like a metronome in the silence, "I need to know if you're prepared to do absolutely everything I ask." Her words carried no ordinary meaning. And then, as if fate had been waiting to pull the rug from beneath me, we stopped in front of a bed. An actual king-size bed assembled between crates and shelves. She sat on the edge slowly, legs crossing in deliberate rhythm, her gaze never leaving mine. "Your first task," she said, "is to help me test the durability of our products." Her tone wrapped the phrase in double edges. I stood frozen, unsure if this was a cruel joke, a test of character, or a doorway into something I should never cross. That was the moment when my life split in two, the safe road I had always taken, and the perilous path she was opening with a single look. You might think you'd know what to do if you were me, but believe me, when desperation meets temptation, the line between right and wrong doesn't stay as clear as you imagine. When I woke up that morning, I wasn't thinking about forbidden glances or dangerous propositions. My concerns were brutally ordinary numbers that refused to shrink, the balance in my bank account that had been mocking me for years, and the gnawing reminder of student loans piling up like an avalanche. I lived in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of coffee and damp carpet, with secondhand furniture I'd rescued from curbsides. My life was functional, but barely. Meals rotated between rice, beans, and whatever discount groceries I could afford. Some nights, the weight of it all pressed so hard on my chest that I wondered if I'd ever catch my breath again. Derek was the one part of my life that carried a sense of normalcy. We'd been friends since middle school, bonded over video games, late-night pizza, and the shared ache of wanting to be more than what our fathers had been. He was the kind of guy who could light up a room with a laugh, while I was always better at fading into the background. He had no idea about the battles I fought alone, how every email from my loan servicer felt like a countdown to disaster. Maybe that's why I didn't hesitate when his mother called with a job offer. Victoria wasn't just Derek's mom in my eyes. She was a figure carved out of contradictions. She had this poise, a way of carrying herself that was both commanding and magnetic, and yet, at family gatherings, she was reduced to the woman who refilled chip bowls and asked about homework. I remembered her at last month's barbecue, sitting off to the side while Derek and his friends argued over the football game. Instead of joining their banter, she'd asked me about my classes, about my plans, about what I wanted to build for myself. I hadn't realized how much that meant to her until later. The truth is, I always saw her differently. Not in the reckless, lustful way you might assume, but in the quiet recognition of someone who had built a life with her bare hands. She had taken a small import company and turned it into something solid, something profitable. People underestimated her constantly, and I could tell it cut deep, even if she hid it behind polite smiles. To me, she wasn't just Derek's mom. She was a woman who had been overlooked for far too long, someone who deserved to be seen. But I never thought that acknowledgement would lead me here to a warehouse where the lines between gratitude and danger blurred with every word she spoke. Standing there, I remembered the way Derek had described her since the divorce. Lonely, a little restless, searching for someone reliable. I had thought he meant someone to help balance the books or manage shipments. What he hadn't said, what he couldn't have known, was that loneliness can twist into something far more complicated. I kept replaying the timeline in my head. The phone call the night before had been professional enough. She needed help with special projects, she said, her tone steady, almost brisk. She mentioned the salary $70,000 a year plus benefits. My throat had gone dry when I heard the number. It was more than a job offer, it was a lifeline. I could almost feel the chains of debt loosening, the panic that haunted me easing. That figure meant freedom, or at least the first step toward it. And she knew that. She knew exactly what kind of power that number held over me. So when she welcomed me that afternoon with a smile that lingered too long, when her hug whispered things words hadn't yet said, I was caught in the crossfire of two impossible truths. I needed this opportunity, but I also knew nothing about it was ordinary. There's something you need to understand about me. I wasn't the kind of guy who went looking for trouble. My days were predictable, my choices safe. I had lived my entire life trying not to rock the boat. Yet in that warehouse, under the weight of her gaze, my carefully constructed defenses started to crack. Victoria was not subtle. She didn't want to be. Every step, every word carried a double meaning. And then out of nowhere, she shifted. The confident, alluring presence melted into something more vulnerable. She sat on the edge of that bed in the corner, her hand smoothing her skirt. And suddenly she wasn't the untouchable woman in red. She was someone tired of being invisible, someone whose voice had been drowned out by years of being Derek's mom instead of her own person. It was in that moment that I realized this wasn't just seduction. It was confession. She was showing me the fracture lines beneath her polished exterior, daring me to look closer. And I did. God help me, I did. You might think temptation is about lust, about flesh and heat and reckless impulses. But the truth? The most dangerous temptation is recognition. The moment someone sees you, truly sees you, when the rest of the world has forgotten. That was the trap I walked into. Not her smile, not her perfume, not even the money. It was the raw honesty of her loneliness, the unspoken plea to be valued. And that was the beginning of the end. The sound of her heels carried through the warehouse like a countdown, each strike of leather against concrete pulling me deeper into something I didn't know how to stop. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. The pace was deliberate, designed to give me time to feel the weight of her presence, to anticipate what might come next. I had always thought danger came with flashing red signs, alarms blaring, every instinct screaming at you to run. But sometimes it comes wrapped in elegance, smiling softly, asking if you'll follow. We stopped at that king-sized bed wedged between the towering shelves. It felt absurd, almost theatrical, like a prop in a play I hadn't auditioned for. Victoria lowered herself onto the mattress with the composure of a queen claiming her throne. She crossed her legs slowly, green eyes locking on mine, daring me to misunderstand her. This company relies on quality, she said, voice smooth as silk but lined with challenge. I need someone who can help me make sure every product meets the highest standard. Her hand brushed along the wooden frame. Even under strain, my throat tightened. I wanted to laugh, to pretend I didn't hear the implication, but the words jammed in my chest. I had never been good at pretending. She tilted her head, waiting, like a teacher watching a student wrestle with an impossible question. I wanted to ask what game she was playing, but the truth was obvious. This wasn't about furniture. This was about me, about whether I'd step into her world on her terms. Miss Barr says, Hamilton, I started, the title a last defense I had. Her correction was immediate, cutting, intimate. Victoria, Mrs. Hamilton was my mother-in-law, and that woman never cared for me anyway. She rose from the bed, unhurried, closing the distance with each step. If we're going to be working together, first names are appropriate. Don't you think? I tried to back away, but the shelves behind me stopped my retreat. She was close now, close enough for me to notice the flecks of gold in her irises, the faint trace of perfume threaded with something sharper courage, maybe, or desperation. My chest tightened with a mix of dread and longing. This feels wrong, I whispered, the words escaping before I could bite them back. She smiled faintly, a curve of lips that carried equal parts amusement and sadness. It only feels wrong because you've been taught to think so. But what if I told you this is simply an opportunity? A legitimate job, excellent pay? Unless her eyes narrowed just slightly, you're imagining something else. And the way she said it made my ears burn. I felt like a teenager again, caught in thoughts I shouldn't be having, only this time there was no denying their reality. You're offering $70,000 a year, I said finally, my voice raw. She stepped back just enough to give me space, as though rewarding me for acknowledging the bait. That's right. Plus benefits, enough to buy you breathing room, maybe even freedom. She sat again, her movements less practiced now, a flicker of vulnerability sneaking through. At the barbecue, you looked at me differently. You asked me about the business when no one else cared. Do you know how rare that is? I swallowed hard. I remembered that night clearly, the way her face had softened when I asked how she'd built the company, how she'd come alive talking about trade routes and supply chains. That hadn't been strategy. It had been genuine interest. And now she was holding it out as evidence that this, whatever this was, had been building long before I realized it. You see me? She whispered, smoothing the fabric of her skirt with hands that trembled more than they should have. Not just Derek's mom. Not just the woman behind the snacks. Do you know how long it's been since anyone bothered to do that? Her confession cracked something inside me. This wasn't just seduction. It was loneliness wearing a mask of confidence, and I was standing at the edge of a choice that could not be undone. My phone buzzed. Derek, how's the interview going, man? Victoria's eyes locked on mine. Tell him it's going well. That I'm thorough, I typed back, still talking details. She's being thorough. Derek's response came almost instantly. That's mom for you. All business. Good luck, bro. The lie sat like a stone in my throat. Victoria smiled, not triumphant, not wicked, but relieved, as if some secret wish had been granted. She pulled a folder from the desk and handed it to me. Here's the official offer. My personal number's on the back, for any questions, or anything else. Our fingers brushed in the exchange, sparking something reckless I couldn't admit to. I told myself I should leave, that I needed space, clarity, distance, and I meant it. But as I reached the door, her voice followed me, softer than before. Whatever you decide, thank you, Fam, for being honest with me today. That gratitude undid me more than her smile ever could. I drove away that night with the folder heavy in my lap, her number burning through the paper like fire. At 11:47 p.m., after hours of staring at the ceiling, I sent a text. I have questions about the position. Her reply came instantly. I'm still awake. Call me. I did, and the moment I heard her voice in the darkness of my room, I knew there was no going back. The first week felt like living two lives at once. By daylight, I was an employee, seated at a glass-walled office overlooking pallets of imported goods, listening as Victoria explained shipping manifests and client contracts. She was precise, professional, sharp as a blade honed by years of carving out space in a business world that rarely respected women. But beneath that exterior, there was a current I could feel humming between us, like electricity waiting for the right switch. Every brush of her hand when she pointed at a ledger, every pause when our eyes met too long, became part of a language no one else spoke. And though the warehouse bustled with deliveries and forklifts, whenever she leaned close, the noise seemed to vanish. At night, The phone became our second world. Conversations that began with work schedules slipped into confessions about her marriage that had died long before the divorce papers, about the hollow way people reduced her to Derek's mom, about the fear that she'd build a company only to find herself alone at its peak. I didn't plan to become her confidant, but once I did, the intimacy spread like wildfire. The second week, the line snapped completely. It happened in the warehouse, long after the workers had gone home. We were reviewing inventory data when she leaned over my shoulder, her hair brushing my cheek, her voice a whisper at my ear. The spreadsheet blurred. All I could hear was her breath. All I could feel was her warmth. When she turned her head just slightly, I made the mistake of meeting her eyes. The kiss was inevitable. It was frantic, unpracticed, like two people starved of touch finally giving in. When we broke apart, both of us trembling, she whispered, "Just once," to get it out of our system. But we both knew it was a lie. Nothing about this would ever be just once. After that, days became a masquerade. She would greet me in the morning with nothing more than a polite nod, discussing shipment delays or client invoices as though we were nothing more than colleagues. But the moment we were alone, the mask cracked. A hand brushing mine, a laugh too warm, a look too loaded. By afternoon, her office blinds were drawn. By evening, our bodies carried the weight of secrets. I became skilled at deception in ways that made me hate myself. Deleting messages before anyone could see, rehearsing alibis in case Derek asked where I'd been, learning how to steady my voice when his name came up. Each lie stitched me further into a web I couldn't escape. The first real test came when Derek invited me to dinner at his house. "Mom says you've been working like crazy," he said. "Come over Friday." "Amy will be there too," I almost refused, but saying no would have raised suspicion, so I went. Walking into their house, a place that had been my second home since adolescence, felt like stepping into a crime scene. Every hallway carried memories of late-night gaming marathons, whispered secrets of teenage years. And now I was sitting at the table with his mother, my lover pretending everything was ordinary. Victoria played her role flawlessly. Jeans, a simple sweater, her hair pulled back. She laughed at Derek's jokes, asked Amy about school, passed me the salt as though she hadn't kissed me breathless 2 hours earlier. I tried to match her performance, but every time she reached for a glass or tucked her hair behind her ear, I remembered what she looked like when we were alone. Then Derek, oblivious, said the words that nearly undid me. "Funny thing, Mom's been so much happier since you started working with her, you must be good for business." His laugh was casual. My heart nearly stopped. Victoria didn't flinch. "The business is running smoothly," she said smoothly. "It's good to have competent help." Under the table, her foot brushed against my leg for a fraction of a second. I wondered if I'd imagined it, but when I glanced up, her eyes betrayed nothing. Dinner ended, and Derek wanted to show me his new gaming setup upstairs. As we left the table, I glanced back. Victoria stood in the kitchen doorway, her face unreadable, but her hands gripped the counter as though she needed it to steady herself. That night, my phone buzzed with a message. "Emergency at the warehouse. Come now." I raced across town, heart hammering, but when I arrived, the warehouse was dark except for the glow from her office. Victoria sat on the edge of her desk, waiting. "No emergency," she said when I entered. "I just needed to see you." Sitting across from you tonight, pretending? It was torture. Her confession cut me in half. I should have been terrified, but instead, I was addicted. The risk, the secrecy, the way my pulse raced, whenever we skirted the edge of discovery, it all bound me tighter to her. We swore we'd be careful, but careful was never enough. Every touch, every whispered word was a gamble with stakes I couldn't even measure. And each day, I sank deeper, knowing full well that one wrong step could destroy everything. By the third week, secrecy had become a second skin. I could lie with a steady voice, tuck away my guilt behind casual smiles, even joke with Derek while my mind replayed the taste of his mother's kiss. But cracks were forming, and I knew it. Every stolen moment left traces, perfume lingering on my shirt, text messages deleted too late, excuses that grew thinner with repetition. The first real fracture came one ordinary afternoon. Victoria and I were in her office, bent over spreadsheets, when the sound of the warehouse door opening echoed through the building. Her body went rigid. "Mom?" Derek's voice called. My blood turned to ice. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Victoria's tone was miraculously steady. "In here, sweetheart." "What are you doing here?" Derek appeared in the doorway holding a paper bag. "Amy bailed on me, thought I'd surprise you with lunch." His gaze shifted to me. "Didn't know you'd be here, Ryan." "Inventory day," I said quickly, forcing a smile that felt like a mask glued to my face. "Cool, brought enough for 3, he said easily, setting the food down. We ate together in the break room, Derek chatting about Amy's moods while Victoria and I avoided each other's eyes like our lives depended on it. For a moment, I thought we'd gotten away with it. Then Derek reached for napkins and knocked over Victoria's purse. Lipstick, keys, wallet, and a small wrapped box tumbled across the floor, stopping at my feet. I picked it up and my heart seized. Inside the clear wrapping, I could see a men's watch, an expensive one. A card peeked out with a single letter visible, R. "What's that?" Derek asked. "Client gift," Victoria said smoothly, plucking it from my hand with a smile. "You know how it is, keeping buyers happy." Derek nodded, already uninterested, but the moment lodged in my throat like a shard of glass. Later, when we were alone, she whispered, "It's for your birthday next week." "You can't," I hissed. "People will notice." Her eyes softened. "People already notice. They see how you look at me, how I smile when you're around. We're not as careful as we think." She was right. The next morning proved it. At 5 a.m., I slipped out of her house, thinking the early hour would keep us safe. My car was parked 2 blocks away, my gym bag slung over my shoulder as a cover story. But as I rounded the corner, I froze. "Early workout, Ryan?" Mr. Patterson, Derek's elderly neighbor, was out walking his dog. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "Yeah," I said, holding up the gym bag. "Trying to get fit." "Funny," he mused. "I walk Buster every morning. Never seen you around new routine," I muttered. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Be careful." "Streets are tricky this time of day," his tone said more than his words. He didn't believe me. The only question was whether he'd tell Derek. That evening, Victoria called. "We need to be more careful," she said. "Or we need to stop," I replied, though the words tasted like broken glass. Silence, then softly, "Is that what you want?" I thought of Derek, of friendship, of loyalty. Then I thought of her laugh, her warmth, the way she said my name. "No," I admitted. "Then come Saturday night," she whispered. "Derek's going to a concert with Amy." Park at the grocery store and walk. 10 o'clock, I should have said no. I should have drawn the line. Instead, I showed up. But fate doesn't care about plans. That night, we were tangled in her sheets when the front door slammed. "Mom?" Derek's voice thundered up the stairs. "Amy and I had a fight. I'm crashing here." We froze, clothes scattered across the floor, my car visible at the grocery lot, my heart hammering loud enough to give us away. "Basement," Victoria hissed. "Now." I scrambled half-dressed through the hallway as Derek's footsteps approached. The bathroom was 3 feet away. I slipped inside, closing the door just as he reached the landing. "Mom? You okay?" "Fine, sweetheart," she called back, her voice miraculously calm. "Just getting ready for bed." I stood in the darkness, shirtless, clutching my shoes, praying he wouldn't open the door. Minutes crawled like hours until finally, I heard voices drifting downstairs. Only then did I creep through the basement and out the garage, running 2 blocks in the freezing night, breathless with the weight of what nearly happened. Later, my phone buzzed. That was too close. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen, my pulse still racing, and understood with brutal clarity this was no longer a dangerous flirtation. This was a fuse burning toward an explosion I couldn't outrun. After that night in the bathroom, every step felt like walking across glass. The thrill that once electrified me turned into a constant thrum of dread. We were too exposed, too reckless, and yet neither of us could stop. We swore to be careful, but caution had already slipped through our fingers. Thursday afternoon, Victoria closed her office door, her eyes stormy with something that looked like surrender. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, pacing the small space, "pretending you're just an employee, pretending I don't think about you every second." "Victoria, we agreed." "I know what we agreed," she snapped, then softened, her voice breaking. "But I'm tired of being smart. Tired of hiding. I need one night where we don't have to lie." She was unraveling, and I wasn't far behind. Logic told me to walk away, to cut ties before the inevitable. But when she stepped closer, her hands trembling as they framed my face, I collapsed into her gravity. That Saturday, I didn't park 2 blocks away. I pulled directly into her driveway, reckless with longing. She met me at the door in a silk robe, her hair loose, her eyes blazing. "No more sneaking," she whispered, pulling me inside. "Tonight, you're mine." We didn't make it past the living room. Every surface of her home became a confession of how much we'd wanted this. By the time dawn crept in through forgotten curtains, we were tangled on her bed, breathless, exhausted, her head resting against my chest. "I love you," she said suddenly, her voice raw in the quiet. The words froze me. We'd never dared to say it out loud. Saying it made it real in a way that terrified me. "You don't have to," she began. "I do," I interrupted, my throat tight. "God help me, I do." She wept then, quietly, as though love itself was dangerous. And maybe it was. And my phone buzzed on the nightstand. 17 missed calls from Derek. Panic shot through me. When the screen lit again, I answered. His voice was strained, frantic. "Ryan, where are you?" "Mom's not answering. Her car's here." I think something's wrong. I'm about to call 911. I looked at Victoria, still half asleep beside me. "Maybe she went for a walk," I lied weakly. "Her keys are on the counter," he snapped. "Ryan, I'm serious." "I'll come over," I said quickly. 10 minutes. I shook Victoria awake. Her eyes went wide when I explained. "Phone's dead downstairs," she muttered, scrambling for clothes. "Chime Diabo, circle the block. I'll meet him at the door in 5. But as I slipped out the back, reality hit like a blow. My car had been in her driveway all night. Mr. Patterson walked his dog every morning. Others would have seen. It was too late. And then I saw him, Derek, standing by my car, staring at it like it was a corpse. His face unreadable. "Derek," I stammered. He turned slowly. "How long?" His voice was low, dangerous. "I can explain." "How long?" The truth spilled before I could stop it. 3 weeks. His laugh was sharp, bitter. Then his fist connected with my jaw. I hit the ground hard, blood flooding my mouth. "That's my mother," he growled, standing over me. "You were supposed to be my best friend." Victoria burst out the front door, hair disheveled, voice cracking. "Derek, stop!" He spun on her, his fury shifting. "You?" "With him? He's 23. He's my friend." Tears streamed down her face. "Derek, please. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," he spat. "You seduced him." "Or he took advantage. Which is it?" "It wasn't like that," I gasped, pulling myself to my feet. "We fell in love." The words hung heavy in the morning air. Derek's face twisted through rage, betrayal, disbelief. "Love? You call this love? You've been laughing at me this whole time." "We never laughed at you," Victoria pleaded. "You're my son." "I love you more than anything." "Not enough to keep your hands off him." His voice cracked, but his fury did not. He turned to me, eyes like fire. "Get out." "You're dead to me, Derek, please," I began. "Get out," he roared. Victoria reached for him, but he recoiled from her touch like it burned. "Him or me," Derek said flatly. "You can't have both." He stormed to his car and drove away, leaving silence so heavy it crushed us both. Victoria collapsed on the driveway, sobbing. I knelt beside her, my heart in shreds. "Go," she whispered. "Please, just go." "We can fix this," I said desperately. "There's no fixing this," she sobbed. "He's my son." "I have to choose him." The finality in her voice hollowed me out. She turned toward the house, wrapping her arms around herself. I love you. But that makes it worse. The door closed behind her with a lock that echoed louder than any slam. And just like that, everything was over. The hours that followed blurred together like a fever dream. I drove home with blood on my lip and silence pounding in my ears. My phone vibrated nonstop, Derek leaving furious voicemails, Victoria sending fractured apologies, even my own mother calling after rumors spread faster than I could imagine. By noon, Derek had blocked me on every platform. By evening, Victoria texted that she had resigned as CEO and was moving with Derek to Colorado. By midnight, she sent one final message. Please don't contact us again. I'm sorry for everything. You deserve better than this, better than me. Attached was proof of a wire transfer, $50,000. Severance, I guessed. A bribe, maybe. Or the only way she knew how to say goodbye. I stared at the number on my screen, feeling nothing but hollowness. Money couldn't buy back a friendship, couldn't erase betrayal, couldn't soften the sound of her voice breaking when she chose her son over me. I started drafting a reply. I'd do it all again. Losing him, losing you, it was still worth it. But the words felt pointless, so I closed the laptop and poured myself a drink instead. The apartment was quiet, filled only with the hum of the refrigerator and the ghosts of her perfume on clothes I hadn't washed. Days turned into weeks. I found another job, mind-numbing data entry that kept the bills paid but drained me of color. I moved to a different apartment, stripped of memories, though the emptiness followed me like a shadow. Derek remained silent, my oldest friend carved clean out of my life. And yet, memories of her clung to me with teeth. I remembered her laugh when we forgot to care about the clock, the way she looked at me as though I was the first person to ever see her, the way my name sounded in her whisper. I told myself to let it go, but late at night, the past was louder than reason. 3 months later, fate twisted the knife. I was standing in line at a coffee shop when I heard an order that stopped my heart. Almond milk, extra hot, half-pump vanilla. I knew that order. I turned and there she was, Victoria. Her hair was shorter, her clothes more casual, but her eyes, those green eyes that had undone me, hadn't changed. Ryan, she breathed, I thought you were in Colorado. I am. Just here for business. Derek doesn't know. We stood surrounded by strangers, but it felt like the world had narrowed to just us. How is he? I asked. Better? Therapy. We both are separately. She hesitated, then said, I read your email every day. I shook my head. I never sent one. Her lips curved in a sad smile. You wrote it in your silence. I felt it. She looked at me directly then, the way she used to, and asked, Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about Derek's fist against my jaw, the friendship buried, the guilt that woke me at 3 a.m. I thought about the way she had whispered my name in the dark, about how alive I had felt in her arms. No, I said simply. Her smile trembled but held. Neither do I. She gathered her coffee. Goodbye, Ryan. She turned toward the door, then stopped, glancing back. That night, you asked me what I wanted. What I really wanted. It was you. It was always you. Then she was gone, sliding into a rental car where Derek sat in the passenger seat, his eyes lifting from his phone. For one split second, our gazes locked. His face shifted through anger, hurt, and something like recognition. Then he gave a single, deliberate nod. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that we had crossed a line and could never go back. They drove away, and I knew with crushing certainty that I would never see them again. Sometimes, though, my phone rings late at night from an unknown number. When I answer, there's only silence. Not empty silence, the kind where you know someone is on the other end, breathing, listening, remembering. I never speak. Neither do they. Eventually, the line goes dead, and I'm left holding the phone, wondering if it was her. That's the thing about forbidden love, it doesn't end cleanly. It lingers in the might-have-beens, the scars that ache when the weather changes. It leaves you haunted by a truth you can't undo, that even knowing the cost, even knowing how it ended, I'd choose it again. Every single time. So that's my story. The one where 3 weeks of passion cost me a lifetime of friendship, where I tasted a love that felt eternal but was doomed from the start. I don't expect you to excuse the choices I made, and maybe you'll judge me for them, but I hope at least you understand. Because the truth is, life doesn't always hand us neat, polished endings. Sometimes the people we're drawn to are the very ones we're not supposed to touch. Sometimes what feels like salvation comes wrapped in ruin. Now I have to ask you, what would you have done? If you were drowning in debt, if the one person who truly saw you offered both a lifeline and forbidden affection, would you have walked away? Or would you, like me, have reached out, knowing the cost? If my story resonated with you, even if only because you've loved someone you shouldn't have, or lost something precious in exchange for a fleeting taste of happiness, let me know. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who might understand, and leave a comment below. You don't have to share details. We all have secrets. But tell me this. Do you regret the love you couldn't keep, or do you carry it with gratitude? Because on nights when the silence is heavy and my phone doesn't ring, I need to believe I'm not alone in choosing love over logic.